there and welcome to the Anya Way channel. I'm Anya, a marketing professional specializing in analytics and automation. In this video, I want to show you how to do a quick GA4 property audit, which should only take 15 minutes. These changes are super quick and easy to implement, but will also help you get the most out of your GA4 configuration. If you have a GA4 property, I would highly recommend to follow along either with this video or my blog post, which I will leave down in the description. So in this blog post, I also made an interactive checklist, which you can go through and keep track of your audit as you follow along. These are the 8 changes that I would recommend for everybody, and we can dive straight in. So in this checklist, the first 4 items are to do with the property settings, and the last 4 items are to do with the data stream settings. So we're going to go through all of these one by one. The first one is changing the data retention period to 14 months. So the reason why this is important is the default data retention in GA4 is set to 2 months. So when you go into your GA4 property, under data settings, and then if you go to data retention, you will see an option to switch between 2 and 14 months. So what does this actually mean? Well, the setting only applies to the exploration reports, and by default on all GA4 properties, it's set to 2 months, which means that if you're using exploration reports, you will only be able to see the last 2 months of data. So this only applies to exploration reports. For your standard reports, you still will be able to see all of your data since your property was activated. So it doesn't affect those reports, but if you've used the standard GA4 reports, you'll know that a lot of the information is not really available, such as some of the event parameters, and a lot of the times you do need to go into an exploration to figure out what's going on a bit of a deeper level. So I would recommend you to switch the event data retention to 14 months, and I will show you exactly what that looks like in reports. Okay, so now I'm in a client's account and they have the event data retention period set to 2 months instead of 14. So in the exploration report, you can see that the earliest date available is exactly 2 months from now. So you can't physically go any earlier than that. So this is exactly why I would recommend everybody to update their event data retention period to 14 months. It can be really important to do some year-over-year comparisons. And as I said, explorations have more data than the standard reports, and you can access more of the event parameters and things like that. And here I have another client account where they do have their event data retention period set to 14 months. And you can see that it's available from May 2022 until now. So it's exactly the last 14 months. And unfortunately, you can't expand it any more than that. If you do want more data, I would recommend to set up a BigQuery link. Then you can have access to all of your data on a more granular level. Okay, so now that you have your event data retention set to 14 months, we can move on to the next item on the list, which is to enable Google Signals. So this is also available in your property settings under data settings and then data collection. So just near the data retention. If you don't have it enabled, you will see a get started blue button at the top right here. If you have it enabled, then you can skip the step. But essentially, Google Signals deduplicates data of users across different devices. They do that by using the signed in to Google. So how I'm signed into my Google account. If I'm signed into my account on both my mobile and my desktop, then GA4 will deduplicate that the user sessions as one user. So it basically gives you more accurate numbers of your users. Especially if you have mobile apps or something where there's a lot of mobile device usage, it's very important. But also it gives you access to some demographic reports, which is specifically for age, gender, and interests. So if you don't enable that, you won't have access to that data at all because they derive that from users who have consented for that data to be used on Google. They're trying to be more privacy conscious, I guess. So if you don't enable it, you won't have access to the specific granular demographics data or reports. And if you do enable it, then you will have the deduplication of the users and also the demographic reports. The only thing to keep in mind is if you're exporting your data into BigQuery, Google Signals is not exported. So any of the deduplication that Google Signals does, that's not exported to BigQuery. So BigQuery will get the raw data without this layer of deduplication that Google Signals introduces. So if you want to also have more device ID type of reporting where you don't want the deduplication to happen, then you also don't need to enable Google Signals. Okay, so now that you've made a decision about Google Signals, we can move on to the next step, which is to link your Google Ads account. So obviously you can skip the step if you don't run Google Ads, but if you do, it's really easy to do. You just also go into your property settings. There is a section about product links. You go into the Google Ads link. I don't have a Google Ads account, but you would just link it, select any Google Ads account that's related to your current account that you're logged in with, and it's done. And that will basically send you any of the Google Ads campaign data. It gives you a bit more reporting capabilities, especially for comparing the behavior on the site with the actual conversions and behavior from Google Ads. So it can be very useful. But if you don't have Google Ads, then obviously you can skip this one, and we can move on to the next item, which is linking Google Search Console. So this one I think should apply to most websites. I would say it's quite important that you have your Search Console set up, and especially if you're receiving a lot of organic traffic, I would highly recommend it. I will have a separate video about how to set up Google Search Console because that's a bit more complex. But if you do have an account already, then you can just click to link an account. The only thing to keep in mind here is that you can only link one Google search account to one GA4 data stream. So if you have multiple data streams, then you might need to think about how you link your Google Search Console, or you might need to restructure your GA4 property to split the data streams. But that's the only thing to keep in mind. It mostly doesn't affect most of the websites, but if that is the case for you, then that's good to know. Okay, so that takes care of the property settings side. So now we're going to move on to the second part, which is the data stream settings. And here you can obviously select your data stream. At the bottom, you will see configure tag settings. It will give you some options of some settings you can change. And the first item on our list is the engaged session timeout, which we want to update to 30 seconds. So in GA4, we actually have the option to change our session timeout. So in Universal Analytics, you're used to the session expiring after 30 minutes. So by default here, it's also set to 30 minutes. You can, of course, change that, I think, up to 8 hours. And we also have this new option of the engaged sessions. So an engaged session is when somebody clicks on something, goes to another page, does some kind of event on your website, and that counts as engagement. And by default, it's set to 10 seconds, which I think is a bit low. I don't think it should count as an engagement at 10 seconds. So I always recommend to set this to at least 30 seconds, but it obviously depends on your business. You can do 60 seconds, and that means that when somebody lands on your website, but they haven't performed any other action, after 30 seconds, this event will trigger and it will count as an engagement. So even if they haven't, let's say, scrolled all the way down or clicked something, but they've stayed on the page for 30 seconds, it will count as an engagement. So I think 10 seconds is a bit low, which is why I like to change it. The next audit item is to add any unwanted referrals. So this is also an option in Universal Analytics. And you can add anything that you don't want in your referrals reporting or your referrals list. So how do you actually find what referrals are you getting right now? You can go into the standard report. Under acquisition, I usually tend to pick traffic acquisition, but you can pick either. And by default, you will see the default channel group, but you can switch to source medium and can filter to referrals only. And then basically check if there's anything that you don't want in this report. So for me, it was the tag assistant. I don't really want it to show up anymore. But sometimes you see things such as referrals from Teams, links, or from certain authentication. When you have a platform that does either sign-ins or payments, you see Stripe sometimes show up where you don't want that in your referral list. So go through the list, see if there's anything that you don't want in it, and you can add it to your referral exclusions, which is now called Unwanted Referrals. And following on from that, another setting that you can change that's similar to Universal Analytics is to add any internal IP exclusions. So this is a setting that's available here as well. You can add any IP addresses, such as from your office, or any static IPs that you don't want included in reporting, for example, developers or designers that use it a lot. Unfortunately, it's the only way to exclude traffic, so there's no other filtering options in GA4. I really hope they introduce that very soon because it's really, really needed. At the moment, you can just add your internal IPs or any static IPs that you might not want to include in the reporting. And the last item on the audit list is to configure your cross-domain measurement. So this wasn't available in Universal Analytics and you had to set it up with Google Tag Manager, but now it's actually available out of the box. So it's a setting here. You can add any domains using several match types that you want cross-domain tracked. So in this case, I would recommend to add any embedded third-party domains, such as if you have any forms embedded on your site, or in my case, calendar booking systems, so that they're cross-domain tracked. This is not needed for subdomain tracking, so you don't need to worry about that. And if you only have one domain and you don't host any third-party applications on your website, then you don't need to worry about this and you can skip it. But majority of the time, you do need to have some kind of cross-domain measurement. And that brings us to the end of the audit walkthrough. I hope you now feel more confident about your GA4 property and data. If you found this video helpful, please like it and share it so that other people can also find it. Don't forget to subscribe for more marketing analytics tips and walkthroughs. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or contact me directly on anyaway.com. I'd be happy to help. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.